It Chapter 2 is the sequel to the hit film It that came out in 2017. It's 27 years later and the child actors have all been replaced by adults. Pennywise is back and the Losers Club need to reunite once more to remember what happened before and to finish Pennywise off once and for all. I liked the first film, I thought it was good. The best part about it was the child actors and their chemistry and their relationships, but the actual scary parts I thought were deeply flawed. There was too much CGI, too much loud music and jump scares, and too many moments where I was just thinking, like, oh, if they'd just done this, or if they just changed that, or if they just had this part in silence or stillness, I could have been really freaked out. It kind of felt like the difference between the actual Shining film and the Shining sequence from Ready Player One. One's kind of quiet and creepy and unsettling, and the other one is big and bombastic and loud and in your face. I liked the miniseries when I was younger, and there are still some legitimately good things in that, and I tried to read the book when I was really young, and I get the impression that what happened to me is a pretty common thing because I just kept picking it up and reading a bit and putting it down and never finishing it. Most of my It knowledge comes from the miniseries, so I don't know how accurate to the book this is. Like the first film, the best part of this is the cast. James McAvoy, Jessica Chastain and Bill Hader are the best. I really buy them as older versions of their characters from the first one, and they give great performances. It was cool to see a comedy guy like Bill Hader get to be more emotional and show that he really can act. I wasn't crazy about the casting of Chastain because I thought it was a boring choice, even though she is a good actress. I thought that Amy Adams would have been a perfect grown-up Beverly, and not just because she played the older version of Sophie Lillis in Sharp Objects, but Chastain did a good job. James McAvoy is always great, and James Ransone as Eddie was perfect casting too. He looks like him, he acts like him, and he's probably the closest in terms of look and performance to his younger self. The two not so great ones are Isaiah Mustafa as Mike and Jay Ryan as Ben. Mustafa might have been alright if every line out of his mouth wasn't filled with importance and vagueness. It is what must happen. The ritual must be performed or light cannot be covered by darkness. You know, stuff like that. He sounds like he's one of the Matrix sequels, but Ryan I thought was just miscast. He's just kind of bland and nice as Ben, just standing around looking forlornly at Bill and Bev. Jesus Christ, did there have to be so many single syllable names that begin with B? Bill, Ben, Bev. And he's just too good looking. He stands out. He doesn't fit into this cast. They could have got someone handsome and in shape that didn't look like he belonged on a CW show. There's even a scene where he gets his abs out for everyone to see, and it was kind of weird. But overall, I did like these actors in these roles, which is good because they're not given very much characterization, which isn't helped by their introductions being far too quick, and some are a bit too subtle. Like, I could kind of get that they were trying to show Ben as a successful but lonely guy because they show him in a big empty house, but I didn't really feel it enough. But look, you might say, we already got a full movie's worth of introduction and character development last time, and to that I would say, it doesn't matter. It's been 27 years, people change, and the actors are different. These are basically different characters. I think they should have spent a bit more time before they meet up again, establishing who they are and what their problems are. And I thought they could have done a better job showing how they didn't remember what happened in the past. Because they've been away from the town for a long time, it's caused them to forget everything that happened when they were kids, even each other. It's one of its mysterious powers, and that's fine, but I didn't really feel that until later when they actually have to come out and say it. Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise is still good. I don't love him as much as other people do. I think it would have been better if the clown wasn't so obviously scary and then would become so once he had lured the children in. It doesn't seem like he's around as much in this one. There are a couple of scenes where he attacks people, one at the very beginning, one with a little girl, and one with a boy in a house of mirrors, which sometimes they just sort of happen, and it felt like the film would come back to those in some way, or maybe show the aftermath, like the families finding them dead or something. But they don't. Because Pennywise doesn't feature as much, he doesn't feel like he's as much of a threat as he was in the first one. And like the first film, it doesn't really go into how it affects the town, which I do remember from the miniseries. It does this thing where it makes the town kind of ignore the bad things that happen, and even makes them act worse than they normally would. I didn't find the first one really scary, and I found this one even less so, which was partly because it felt like there were fewer actual scary scenes in it. There was one really creepy scene with an old woman who's like hiding in the shadows of her kitchen, and her voice changes and she's like running and you can hear her coming towards Bev, and then she pops out and you do jump, but then almost instantly it's not scary anymore because she's CGI. I do not understand why everything has to be CGI. If you can see that it's CGI, it's not scary. And so many of the things in this film could have been done practically. with just a bit of imagination. There were a couple moments that were CGI that kind of had to be, that were actually great though. There was this tiny insect thing with a baby's face on it that was awful looking, and a part where a severed head sprouts spider legs that did actually work really well. Also, every time a kind of scary person or a creature appears, it screams and vibrates and jumps at the camera. They did it in the first one and it was ridiculous there, and there's even more of it here. It doesn't help that the characters getting scared in this are adults instead of young kids, which automatically makes it less frightening. It is a long movie. It's 2 hours and 50 minutes long, but surprisingly, I didn't feel that length, which honestly I don't really understand. I mean, I was never bored or anything, but it had a strange kind of structure, especially when they all split up once they get back to Derry and they each go on like a walk down memory lane and experience memories from their childhood when they encountered Pennywise that weren't actually shown in the first film. It reminded me of Endgame a bit. That felt like the indulgent part that stretched out the runtime the most, but also the final showdown with Pennywise went on for a very long time too. I think it would have worked better if they had taken some of that time away from those parts and had more scenes of the main characters all together and interacting with each other, especially at the start for their introductions. I already cared about them, but I think I could have been pushed a bit further because those were the best scenes. And it's weird to me that this film alone is almost as long as the entire miniseries was. It's also a pretty funny movie, sometimes to its detriment, especially during the scenes that are supposed to be scary or intense, but I laughed a lot throughout and the humour makes the characters much more likeable. Obviously Bill Hader was the standout in that department, but James Ransone as well. He had some great physical acting and he had some of the best lines. James McAvoy has some funny bits too. Like the first one, it's a good looking movie. It's nice to look at, which again is sometimes at odds with the subject matter, being more visually impressive than scary. There's a strange Native American mystical angle that comes out of fucking nowhere, but it feels like something that was probably in the book. I don't really care, it still feels out of place here. There are a couple of cameos in the movie, one that takes place in an antique shop that goes on a bit long, but I still liked it. By the end of the film, I was starting to realise that I wasn't finding it very satisfying. All the characters are set up to have their own individual fears that you would assume they would have to face in the form of Pennywise manifesting some kind of scenario. And that does kind of happen for McAvoy and Ransone's characters, but not really for anyone else. They have their moments, but the things they face don't quite match their issues in a way that's satisfying to me when they overcome them. It also gets muddled up with the theme of you have to believe in things for them to be true. Like, if you believe that your slingshot is a monster killer, then it will be, because thoughts and beliefs are what give Pennywise his power.
You're doing it.
Doing what?
Using your imagination, Peter.
So some characters have to really believe to be able to face him, but it wasn't really established that they didn't believe, so when they finally do, it doesn't really mean that much. There are some things that are set up that don't really have satisfying payoffs, like a running joke about Bill, who's now a writer, never being able to finish a book well, and the scene where he says that his bike once outran the devil, which is never explained or followed up on. It's things like this that might seem kind of small, but actually hurt the film. There's a final monologue given by a character at the end of the film which tries to make it feel grand and epic and emotional and uplifting, and it just doesn't. It has all this stuff going for it, with children now having become adults in a story that spanned 27 years, getting over the past, moving on and getting over the trauma and righting the wrongs and facing your demons, and I just didn't feel it. I liked the movie, but I could tell what it was trying to do, what it was trying to go for, and it was failing. I'm going to give It Chapter 2 a B-. It had a lot of problems, but I did still enjoy it. I like the cast for the most part. I don't mind movies like this being this long, because I've watched some 3-hour movies in the past that were an absolute slog. If you like the first one, you'll like this, and there are enough horror moments in it that it's a proper horror film, but I think that Andy Muschietti, the director, seems more suited to doing action comedy than horror. You'll jump in your seat, you'll laugh, you might even cry, even though I didn't, so I would recommend it. You have to appreciate the effort that they put into both these films, because they are anything but a cheap cash grab, which is not something you can say about that many horror films today. Also, the CGI kids are a bit distracting, but what the fuck else are they going to do? Kids are going to grow, and when they do, they just aren't as likable. Thank you very much for watching my review. Please like and subscribe. It really helped me out. It helps the channel grow. Follow me on Twitter at Look to the Movies. Please comment down below. Let me know if you've seen It Chapter 2, what you thought of it, liked it, disliked it, agree or disagree with any of my points, or if you have any points of your own. I'll be back soon with more reviews, and I will see you then.